how to creatively fund a project. And I'm going to be joined by Tigist Kebebe, media entrepreneur, financier, and operations director of Habeshavu. Is this correct? Operating from Ethiopia and the UK, I believe. And I also have with me Haneen Al Saleh, a producer from Aspire to Inspire Productions from Saudi Arabia. We unfortunately don't have Bilal with us, and your moderator as well. Here we go. It's on, it's good. So, briefly, tell us, each of you, what you do, who you are and what you do. Nice, gentle introduction.
Good afternoon, and we can't see anybody because of the lights. Following on from earlier panel, which was brilliant, I was very happy to fly out of Ethiopia because it's full of African or EU meetings. The whole city is full of meetings, and hopefully we'll all see part of that $1 billion. So my name is Tigist, and as introduced, Operations Director for Habeshavu. Based in Ethiopia, we have an office and registered there, as well as the US and the UK. Shortly, what we do 4 things. We've done 4 things mainly because of need and finances as well. So we start off as Ethiopian film distributors initially, and then we've followed on to creating our own OTT platform, which is very Pan-African heavy. And then we started organizing film festivals in London and the US. Then going into working with telcos to provide our service. And the 4th one is the actual OTT platform. As we invested quite substantial amount for it, our board of directors were very keen to generate income. So it's now available for white labeling for the Pan-African market. So those are the 4 things we do. I'm based 75% of the time in Ethiopia, 25% in the UK. And then that will be a good introduction to start off with.
Thank you. And Haneen?
Hello, my name is Haneen Al Saleh. I'm from Saudi Arabia. I'm the founder of Aspire to Inspire. I'd say something about myself. I'm just a representation of women in the industry. I started Aspire to Inspire a couple of years ago as an actress, looking into funding my project. And from there, I created a company. What we do is we create a partnership with artists across the globe because we believe in diversity, and we enable funding from the Middle East and Saudi Arabia. That's in a nutshell.
Okay. Can you tell us really in a nutshell what the market is like in Saudi at the moment?
So Saudi Arabia in the film industry started booming recently. I would say we're still emerging, we're still growing, we're still looking for partnership, we're still looking for talents like the ones we see here. And there's a lot of initiatives, whether it's through Ministry of Culture or film industries like Council of Film in Saudi Arabia, or it could be some events and partnership with Red Sea Film. Also NEOM, our sustainable city, have their own program. Earlier on, Wayne was speaking about it. We've got a lot of initiative going on because it emphasizes on the vision of Saudi Arabia. As you may know, Saudi Arabia is one of the biggest producer of oil, and now we're trying to diversify the market and enable other industries like films and art to come to the market to contribute to the economy of the country.
Thank you. Tigist, can you tell us about the film infrastructure in Ethiopia at the moment? Because I know it has 128 million citizens, or thereabout. So essentially the 2nd biggest population in Africa, am I right? So tell us about that.
Correct. So the film industry in Ethiopia, actually, the first film was made in 1965. That's a little while ago. But unfortunately for Ethiopia, we haven't come very far away from there. We're still at a very infant stage. 120 million people, 75% under the age of 35, so very young workforce. very able, talented. But access, I mean, I think everybody today has been discussing this, access to production or access to education has been limited. So even though we have this, old industry, which is trying to drag itself out of the ashes, really. So, but we are very hopeful. It's actually improving. We're seeing there are 3 films currently at the Pan-African Film Festival showing this week or last week. We hold, as I said, festivals in London, New York, and Washington, D.C. That kind of has brought an interest into Ethiopian film industry. It can grow. We are hopeful that it is going to grow, and the government, the ministry are very supportive. But personally, I don't believe it's something to be done with the government. I think it's mostly to do in the private sector that it will actually make it grow better than it is now.
Okay. Haneen, tell us how you set up your company in Saudi.
I started the company in Dubai, actually.
Oh, okay.
And then I branched it to Saudi Arabia. It started off, as I said, I started as an amateur artist. I went to the gym, and inside the gym was there was actually an art production. I would say very amateur art production team. And then I started looking at them, and I joined the team. And then we started acting in national theaters. And then I won Best Actress of the Year of 2021 from not knowing anything about art. I come from Saudi Arabia. It wasn't part of the culture. And then I got access to the industry, and I saw the talent and the diversity and how can you really express what you want to do. And I saw the opportunity for investment and for creating an entrepreneurship behind it. So I created.
Can we try and keep that door closed? Sorry.
So I created the company. My motto in life is aspire to inspire. So I named it Aspire to Inspire.
Thank you. Tigist, why did you have to set up an OTT? For those of us that don't know what an over-the-top platform is, it's bypasses cable, broadcast and satellite. So why was that necessary in Ethiopia? Why are people not just using Netflix, for example?
Well, there's quite a few reasons for that. I think one of them is, I think as we heard earlier, that there is one cinema for every 700,000 population in Africa. That's one of them. Secondly, just quickly to go back, our OTT application is available globally. So we work in Ethiopia with the Ethio Telecom, Safaricom, all those guys to provide content to the Ethiopian community. And then outside of Ethiopia, we provide our service to the diaspora. So it's quite a large Ethiopian diaspora outside. There were reasons. I think if I go back, we started up in 2015. I was born in Ethiopia, but left to live abroad. And I was in a different field before coming into this market. What was interesting is as we were traveling, we could see there isn't accessible Ethiopian content or actually African content when we started. I think Nigeria has a big production. We could access Nigerian content, some South African. But a group of us got together and we said, where do we find good quality Ethiopian content that is not, it's telling the story the way we see it. There weren't that many available. So that's when it started. First of all, we started producing some Ethiopian content. And then where are we going to put it? Who's going to accept it? So the big streamers are very careful about taking African content or paying the right price for them. So I don't shy away from it. Then the next stage was we built our own platform. It is state-of-the-art. It has, I don't want to name names, but it's one of the, it takes live streaming, audio, music, games, and all sorts of things. So we built that. It took about 2 years. Then we were able to say, now that we have the application, that we'll be able to put not only Ethiopian content or any other contents which are not found on the big streamers. So that was one of the reasons to be able to be empower ourselves, really, to make sure that what we are doing is actually continuous. We're not dependent on somebody else who may just put the rug under our feet. As well as being able to say, we have the capacity, we will build it, so we will use it. And then now we're actually licensing it to our third parties. So it's now available. As I said earlier, in Ethiopia, we are the first IPTV or OTT platform to launch in October. with Ethio Telecom. Ethio Telecom has, thank you. So Ethio Telecom has 70 million users, data and voice. And then Safaricom is right behind them. It's public knowledge, so 8 million. So we're looking at that market. We are using not only Ethiopian content, we're using news channels so that there is a diverse news coming in as well. So it's about 20. And then now we're going out to the other markets, and then we're signing agreements as we go along with production houses and other places. So it's just to be able to be self-sufficient. That's why we've done it.
And also, am I right in thinking that there is the issue of language? Is the content preferred, obviously, not to be in English when it's Ethio?
Yes, we have 80 different languages. So one of the issues was as well, the stories told. Most of the films we take, local ones, they have to be original and in original language, so we can subtitle them. So normally it's not very attractive. I speak one other language, and it's not very attractive for the market. But we're saying, well, we will be able to tell the story better, and then we can put subtitling. So we can have French, German, Italian, Arabic, whatever. So having that ability to manage and control was one of the idea of building our own, which has been a long process, but is worth it.
Okay. I'm going to stay on this subject before I come back to you.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more.
How did you get the funding to set up the OTC?
To start off with, there were 3 founders, very generous founders, because we were all very invested in the project. Once that's at the beginning, at the 2015 stage, when we were all very rosy-eyed, thinking we want to bring all Ethiopian content to all the kids, it would be wonderful. And then we hadn't realized how much work it was. And then we brought in 2 investors who invested substantially. So we're very fortunate. I know it's not very easy to raise capital or get investment, but that's how we've done it. So we had 2 major investors to come on board.
Thank you. And coming back to you, Haneen, what would you say is the biggest challenge for you creating content from Saudi?
So, as you may know, Saudi Arabia is still a conservative culture. And what I mean by this is we're just emerging into film industry. There's social and cultural aspects of the films that are produced and coming from Saudi Arabia. And I think the challenge that we face, because we want to promote diversity and diverse content, is that we are bounded with these parameters that are actually established by the law and Ministry of Culture in Saudi Arabia, which then puts us onto a zone where we could actually look at the Saudi Arabian culture and put the light there, or the GCC culture or the Middle Eastern culture, and to tell the untold story of that nation and that land. But if we want to explore more and understand more the freedom of creating a content, this is something that we could consider in the future, and it as a challenge, to be honest.
And how have you been working to get your projects off the ground specifically?
Very good question. I'm sure that some people will resonate with me. It's sometimes ad hoc. Every project has its own pros and cons, and every project has its own challenge. I've heard this in a couple of speaks. It really depends on people who are in the project. It depends on what type of idea, who are the writers, who are the crew. But it starts with, of course, a great idea. It starts with a team of artists and directors, and then it take off with connections and understanding where the fund is, understand how to knock the door, and you need to knock the right doors to get the right support. So it really depends on the idea and the type of project. But I must say I was lucky because I came in the right time. I came in when the funds are there. I came in when people are interested and keen to understand about Saudi Arabia and the Saudi market and what's going on and how are we going to make films in a country where there was no cinema a couple of years ago. So yeah, it's interesting.
Thank you. Coming back to you, Tigist, can you tell us how the subscription model works for Haber Bishview?
So having the ability to control what we can do. So we have a variety of subscription out of Ethiopia or out of the continent. We have a monthly and yearly subscription model, which we have the Visa, MasterCard, all the payment integrated. Mainly because I think the diaspora is able to make that payment. And then within Ethiopia, specifically Ethiopia at the moment, we have about 5 different varieties. So obviously we understand one of the major things in Africa is that access to credit card or debit card. That's why majority of the time they're not able to pay. So we have done a day pass, weekly, monthly, not yearly, because that seems to be quite a hard one. And then we're just about to introduce the ad-supported package as well. Now, earlier I mentioned signing with the telcos. It's not to give them promotion. It's mainly because they have the means of accessing store airtime. For example, with Safaricom, you have M-Pesa, and then Ethio Telecom is just done Telebur. So those modalities work for us. So each time we're integrating this payment model so that people are able to pay for them. We are reducing the price of a subscription within Africa to make it affordable, with the idea that the diaspora pays slightly more to support the industry. So it's got to be supporting each other. So we are a business now. So we have to, I've got a board of to answer to. So we have to make money. So we are making the subscription affordable within certain territory and then slightly more expensive outside.
And when it comes to the content that's produced, is there a specific focus in terms of genre or types of story, types of narrative?
Currently, we are accepting or producing or licensing all sorts of content. So there are limitations in Africa, as you know. There are certain parts that we must not be discussing and touching. But at the same time, we see that, example, in Ethiopia, the documentaries do very well. People are very interested. The news, not so much, because I think people are a bit fed up. Outside of Ethiopia, we find in North America, they want to see original content in local language. People are really consuming local content and they want to be able to see themselves in it. So we are very much heavy into producing or co-producing local content within Ethiopia. Eventually, we hope to expand in other markets as well. But definitely documentaries, films, children's program, because they want their children to learn languages. And then we're going into audiobooks as well, which are very, very important at the moment.
Thank you. Partnerships, I think you mentioned that word earlier. Can you tell us a bit more about what sort of possibilities there are in terms of partnership agreements?
Yeah, sure. In the region, in Saudi Arabia, you can have a partnership with local producers and local filmmaking and production houses. There are many, and they are also established since the 1950s in Egypt, Africa. And they really produce in Saudi Arabia, Middle East, GCC. You can also partnership with Red Sea Film. You can partnership with the Film Commission. Of course, when I say partnership, also you need to consider the IP rights and the talent rights, etc. You can also partnership internationally and do co-production with international companies and international talents outside the region in Europe. We're open to that. There are multiple schemes for funds currently ongoing. Lately, last year actually, I was fortunate to be with Afro Can, and around that beautiful festival, there was around $100 million US dollar fund that was also announced with the Ministry of Culture of Saudi Arabia to partnership with talents and artists to help create and produce local content and also international content that comes from the region, from Saudi Arabia. Nice.
And well, Tigist, can you tell us about some of the partnerships you've made?
Well, I think it's very, as I said earlier, the application is there for a lot of filmmakers, content owners, network operators to use it. Please do. Recently, unfortunately, they're not able to be here, but we've signed an agreement with the Sudanese Filmmaker Association in exile. So they're currently, the association, some of them are in Sudan, but the ones we're dealing with are in Egypt, and they have fantastic documentaries that they haven't been able to place anywhere else, bar YouTube, where you don't actually get a lot of money for. So we've signed that agreement with them. Those contents will be available on ours next week, and we are very pleased to say that we don't censor. We're able to distribute that for them internationally as well, and that's again we're looking out to other African or other Middle East partnership as well to be able to use the platform. As I said earlier, the capital investment on the platform is already done. So we're not looking to recoup that. So it's actually to be able to have it accessible to anybody else who might have, 10 or thousands of hours of content. So we're very happy with that. And I'm sorry, Mohammed isn't here. We were hoping that they would have been here today to celebrate with us as well.
Thank you. How do you both see yourself positioned in terms of being an inspiration to people coming up in the industry, for coming from your regions in particular? And also interesting because you're both female as well. So just,
So it's quite interesting because I'm a female from Middle East, from a region where women were thought to be seated and not standing up for their rights. I think it's an area where this completely changed, and I live an example. By the way, I'm also an engineer. I studied engineering back in the days in the UK, and I started my career with 5,000 men and myself from Saudi Arabia. And then I had a passion of art, and I had a passion of creating units and unity for expression and showing talents. And I stood by it. And luckily, I come in an era where now we are supported being female. If I'm a female, I have two doors open, not just one. So I think the era of women empowerment, it's gone now. It's cementing our stage and being there and perform rather than empowering. It's no longer empowering. It's we standing there and we're empowering others.
Thank you.
That's very good. Yeah, I would like to know which two doors, but so I have. So for me, I think we are in a very privileged position to be here and hope to inspire many young and old women and men as well. I think for me, it was an eye-opener because I lived in many other countries, lived in about 7-8 countries, most of the time in the UK. And then to be able to go to Ethiopia, which is my birth country, and to open an office there and come across this difference between a man and a woman. And I wasn't naive, but I think I was quite surprised, especially when I had a male deputy who went into a meeting with me, very able, very talented man. So we're going to meetings in government offices, and the attention was to him. And it took a little while for me to realize what was all that about. And he was too embarrassed. He was trying to correct them. So I realized this is actually an issue, but only once I went to Ethiopia. So it made me think about how do I actually make sure that that doesn't happen to somebody else, or I have to assert myself without being rude. We talked about rudeness in Africa because the door shuts if you're rude, if they feel that you are not respecting them. I've come across that twice. I've learned, but it's very difficult. So what I'm trying to do is I mentor quite a lot of young women, engineers and people wanting into the entrepreneurship and to start up the business. I have a daughter, so it's very important that she sees this isn't an issue. She's also in the industry, but it's not a fight, but it's a struggle. But it's a struggle that we have to win because I don't want to let it affect myself or anybody else because there's no reason for that. But sorry, can I just quickly say, and one more thing is also, we don't want to have positive discrimination because we don't want to be favored for not doing the right thing. So that's also very important because we need to be earning our place as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to add something. Sometimes when they say, oh, we need to have a quota in women and we need to support women, and I go like, we need to support the right talent. If you just hire a woman just because if she's a woman, then you're not giving her a favor. So it's very important to have that balance of giving the right people the right talent and supporting women at the same time. Yeah.
Absolutely. How do you both see, what sort of content do you see coming out of both regions for both of you in the next, say, 10 years?
For me, I think in Africa, hopefully if I generalize, but I think it's original story told, going back to roots. I think we've seen what Hollywood and other places have done, and they're running out of stories, I think. They're running out of original stories. And I think somebody earlier said about Amazon leaving the African, sort of investment in Africa. The first thing, Amazon, Netflix, all those guys came there because it's a huge market. It's an enormous market. That's what they saw. They weren't coming to help the film industry. They weren't coming to help us. I think it's mostly about, how much money can I make? And then we have an issue because maybe as Africans, we're not very good at paying for content. So they see that there is no money going into their purses, and that's probably why they pulled out. But I am very hopeful for national content. People will pay because I see it. It will be traditional, maybe books being translated, stories coming out with different languages, children's program. Those are the kind of things. I think we're not going to do the blockbuster or things that Hollywood has done. And I'm hopeful that will be the case because that's the one we're looking for.
Thank you. And Haneen?
So a couple of things. There's production of international content, different genre, comedy, horror, that's really locally produced, but it reflects the genres and the culture of international film. And there is also a big spotlight, as I said, we're, as Saudi Arabian, try to emphasize on the local talent and the local culture and show it to the world. There's a lot of that when it comes to film production, whether it's documentaries or real stories. I've seen a lot of coming projects and upcoming untold yet projects that are coming with this picture of sharing a spotlight on the talent of Saudi Arabia and the culture of the country.
That's great. So we are on time. Have we got time for a question from anybody? We have time for a question if anybody wants to ask anything to Haneen and Tigist. We will be finishing 2 minutes early, 1 minute early. Do you have? No. You do, Terry? Can it be really quick?
Oh, come on. In Ethiopia, we do that. Salamna? Salamna.
Denalish?
I'm a second. Yeah. My question was, you see, the issue we presented was database, in terms of population, right after Nigeria, there's Ethiopia. And you expect that should be the market, and all of that. And what have you learned? Why there's big population yet, so, because that's a market, but why? It was quick, right?
Very good question.
Perfect.
So our marketing team do a lot of work. I think it's because, I will only talk about Ethiopia because I don't want to upset anybody else. It's because there is a huge amount of free content on various channels. So people are used to consuming that content. That's one. Piracy, unfortunately, is very acceptable. So ethically not correct. But people are still, I go to dinner parties and somebody said, I saw such and such a film. I'm thinking, it only released in London last week. How did you see it? So, yeah. So I think there is that kind of willingness not to pay for content, not respected. That's changing slightly. So, yeah, we have 120 million people. How many of them pay substantial amount? I think it's just the acceptability of free content that is available or pirated, sharing. That is the issue. Once we have, by the way, in Ethiopia, we have the legislation of some sort, but it's not punishable. So it's still acceptable to do that, and you will just get a slap on your hand. So that's probably one of the reasons that it's not converting into finances. Is that correct? Is that your question?
Thank you. So thank you so much. I really enjoyed that. I hope you did too. Wonderful. Thank you.